I'm Dana. Standing at the altar, I can still feel the echo of the chaos that preceded this moment. The wedding was about to start, and my father's absence was a gaping wound. Just 15 minutes before, I received a text from him, "I'm not walking you down the aisle in that dress." And right below it, my mother's message, "You're embarrassing us." I was in the bridal suite, surrounded by the commotion of the wedding preparations. The sound of laughter and the faltering church piano filled the air, but all I could focus on was the words on my phone. My maid of honor, Lily, was behind me, steaming one of the bridesmaids' dresses with a tiny iron weed borrowed from the hotel. Lily asked softly, "Dana?" I couldn't answer. I was looking at myself in the mirror, at the dress, and at my body. The bright, white satin under the yellow vanity lights showed off my scars and the extra weight I'd gained. My mother hated this dress because it revealed all the parts of me that I'd tried to hide. I lifted my hand and touched the scar near my collarbone. "This is who I am now," I whispered. Lily heard me and set the iron down carefully. "You look beautiful," she said, with an edge of anger in her voice. I laughed a little, not because she was lying, but because of the passion in her words. 3 weeks earlier, my mother had been in the bridal shop outside Miami, tugging at the sleeve of another dress and saying, "This one is much more flattering." That word flattering had haunted me since I returned from Iraq. After the surgeries and an early retirement from the Navy due to a knee injury, I was no longer the version of myself that my parents were proud of. I grew up in a small town in Florida. My father was a well-known real estate developer, and my mother was a socialite who spent her days organizing charity events. Appearances were everything in our family. When I joined the Navy at 21, my father was over the moon. He'd brag about me to everyone, "My little girl is a Navy officer, serving our country." But everything changed when I came back different. The knee injury happened during a mission in Iraq. A bad landing from a helicopter led to torn ligaments, multiple surgeries, and the use of steroids. The weight gain was rapid, and my body changed in ways I couldn't control. I remember the first time my mother's discomfort was obvious. We were at a fancy restaurant, and when I reached for a piece of bread, she said, "Are you sure you should be eating that?" It was like a tiny knife in my heart. I tried calling my father after those texts. Straight to voicemail. I called again, and it was declined. That hurt more than the texts themselves. For a split second, I hoped he'd hear my voice and remember I was still his daughter. Lily walked over and said, "Your parents left the chapel. They got in their car about 5 minutes ago. Your dad looked mad, and your mom was crying." I sat down hard in the chair by the makeup counter, numb. Outside, I could hear the guests settling in. My wedding was going to happen whether I was ready or not. Part of me wanted to rip off the dress, but Lily stopped me. "Do you love Ethan?" she asked. "Of course I do," I replied. "Then marry him," she said simply. It was easy for her to say. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn my parents' love through achievement. Good grades, Navy promotions, and making the family look good. But as soon as I stopped being the perfect image, they started treating me differently. Then, there was a knock at the door. One of the chapel coordinators stepped inside, looking nervous. "Lieutenant Dana, there's a retired chief petty officer outside asking for you. He says he served with your father and with you." I frowned. Then I heard the slow tapping of a cane against the hallway floor. The coordinator stepped aside, and there he was, Captain Thompson, 75 years old and still imposing. His navy dress whites were perfectly pressed, and the medals on his chest caught the light with every movement. His hand shook a little, but his posture was as straight as a rod. "Chief Petty Officer," I said automatically. He looked me over, not at my weight or scars, but at me. Then his eyes settled on the dress. "I've spent 35 years around Navy uniforms. If that dress tells the truth about what you've survived, then it's the finest uniform in this building," he said. Those words broke me. I covered my mouth and started crying. Lily turned away to give me a moment. Captain Thompson waited. After a minute, he cleared his throat. Your father should be ashamed of himself. I wiped my eyes and said, please don't hate him. His face softened. That's the problem, Lieutenant. I knew your father when he was young enough to be better than this. Then he held out his arm. Are we going to keep your future husband waiting or not? As we walked down the hallway, my tears mostly dried, but my hand still shook. Captain Thompson walked slowly beside me, his cane tapping against the hardwood floor. You hungry? He suddenly asked. I blinked at him. You've got that look sailors get when they forget to eat and start making emotional decisions. Despite myself, I laughed. At the end of the hallway, Lily stopped to fix the train of my dress one last time. The sounds of the guests filtering into the chapel downstairs made everything feel surreal. Just before the chapel doors opened, I almost lost my nerve. I could hear the music downstairs, and I knew Ethan was standing at the altar. The thought of walking in without my father hurt, no matter how calm I tried to be. Captain Thompson adjusted the cuff of his uniform. You ready? He asked. No, I admitted. He smiled. Good means you understand marriage. Lily opened the chapel doors slightly to peek inside. Everybody's seated, she said. The piano music floated through the hallway, and my stomach twisted. Captain Thompson held out his arm, and I noticed his hand shaking more than before. You okay? I asked. I'm 75 years old, he said dryly. Everything hurts. But I wouldn't miss this for the world. I slipped my arm through his, and the cool, stiff fabric of his uniform felt strange against my hand. Lily fixed the back of my dress one last time and whispered, make them choke on their own opinions. I snorted. The chapel coordinator gave us the signal, and the doors opened. For a moment, nobody moved. I could feel all the eyes in the room on us. The chapel was filled with about 90 guests, with white wooden pews and tall windows glowing in the late afternoon Florida sun. Battery candles flickered along the aisle. As we walked, something strange happened. Nobody looked disgusted or embarrassed. People just looked emotional. An older man in a Vietnam veteran hat stood up as we passed, and then another veteran followed suit. It was as if they recognized the struggle I'd been through. At the altar, Ethan saw us. His shoulders dropped, and he mouthed, "You're beautiful." I felt my chest tighten. Then I saw movement near the back of the chapel. My father had come back. For a second, hope flared in me, but then I saw his face. It was pure fear, and he was staring at Captain Thompson. Captain Thompson noticed immediately. Without breaking stride, he turned his head slightly toward the back row. The two men locked eyes, and my father looked like a boy again. Captain Thompson said calmly, "Been a long time, Robert." The piano player faltered for a moment. My father swallowed hard. Captain Thompson continued, "I wonder if you'd still recognize the sound of accountability." The air in the chapel changed. My father's jaw tightened, and he automatically straightened his posture, like a young sailor in front of his superior. We finally reached the altar. Captain Thompson placed my hand into Ethan's and said, "Take care of her." Ethan nodded. "Yes, Chief Petty Officer." The ceremony began. It was simple and real, just what Ethan and I wanted. Halfway through the vows, I looked toward the back of the chapel. My father was sitting down, looking terrible. My mother was beside him, clutching her purse. After the ceremony, at the reception, the tension was thick. My father sat at a table near the wall, nursing a drink. My mother kept smiling too brightly and smoothing her dress. Ethan handed me a plate. "You need to eat something." "I'm not hungry," I said. "Tough. You've had a rough day," he replied. Then my mother approached. "Dana, your father and I were emotional earlier. We just wanted today to be perfect," she said. I stayed quiet. She continued, "I was only trying to protect you." I almost laughed. Protect me from what? I asked. She lowered her voice. You know how people talk, especially about women. People can be cruel when somebody gains weight. I set my fork down. Mom, you weren't protecting me from people. You were protecting yourself from being embarrassed by me. Her face changed. That is not fair, she said. I looked at her evenly. I managed supply missions in Iraq. I can survive people seeing my arms at a wedding. My father suddenly appeared. Don't talk to your mother that way. Ethan stood up firmly. Robert, you had the chance to stand beside her today. My father's jaw tightened. You don't know our family. Ethan replied, if I understood leaving your daughter alone 15 minutes before her wedding, I'd be worried about myself. Just then, Captain Thompson's voice cut across the room. Still walking away when things get uncomfortable, Robert. The whole hall froze. My father went pale. Captain Thompson approached slowly with his cane. He stopped a few feet away from our table. Most people get softer as they age. But some men spend so much energy hiding shame that they turn hard instead, he said. My mother looked completely lost. Captain Thompson, what exactly is going on here? She asked. Captain Thompson looked at her and said, your husband never told you why he left the Navy. In 1987, he ignored a safety protocol during a training exercise because he thought regulations slowed him down. A young sailor got hurt bad enough to lose his career. My mother stared at my father in disbelief. You told me it was family reasons, she whispered. My father rubbed his hands over his face. It was an accident. Captain Thompson nodded. Yes, it was. But then why punish your daughter every time she reminds you life changes people? My father finally looked at me. You don't understand what it's like to lose who you were, he said quietly. I nodded. Yes, I do. I lost my career, my body, and the version of me that everyone applauded. But I didn't make other people suffer because of it. Near the cake table, Ethan's niece, Sarah, accidentally switched her phone to selfie mode while trying to stop recording. A nervous burst of laughter filled the room, breaking the tension. Captain Thompson raised his glass. To Lieutenant Dana, logistics officer and a pain in my ass for 7 straight years, but the only person I ever trusted to find missing equipment in the middle of a storm. People laughed and clapped. My father sat down slowly. Before the applause faded, he looked up at me and said, I don't know how to talk to you anymore. I looked at him and said, start with the truth. And then try kindness. The morning after the wedding, Ethan and I drove north toward the Everglades in silence. The Florida landscape was beautiful after the overnight rain. We stayed in a small cabin that smelled like old wood and coffee. That first night, we ate leftover wedding cake with plastic forks. Ethan asked me, you okay? I started to say yes, but then I stopped. I keep replaying the reception and my dad, I admitted. He nodded. I spent so many years trying to make them proud again. Even after those texts, part of me still wanted him to walk me down the aisle. A few minutes later, Ethan went outside to check the hot tub, and I started to cry. I cried because my parents had embarrassed me, because I still loved them, and because a part of my relationship with them had ended. 3 days later, we drove back to our normal lives. But little things had changed. My aunt sent me flowers with a note saying she should have spoken up earlier. Lily sent me screenshots of relatives gossiping in the family group chat. A week later, Captain Thompson called me. You settling back into civilian life? He asked. I'm surviving, I replied. Good. Your father contacted me. He asked if I thought he was a bad man. I asked, what did you tell him? He said, bad men usually don't ask that question. About 3 months after the wedding, I got a text from my father. I watched the wedding video. You looked strong. That was it. No apology, but I knew what it meant. He finally saw me again. I texted back, I was strong. I also deserved kindness. He never replied, but it didn't matter. These days, my parents and I have limited contact. We have holiday calls and occasional dinners, but we stay away from old wounds. In our living room, there's a framed photo of me walking down the aisle with Captain Thompson. Whenever I see it, I'm reminded that blood gives you relatives, but loyalty makes people stay when life gets tough. And sometimes, the people who stand by you at your worst become more like family than those who only loved you at your best.